Well, good morning, church. Thanks for continuing in our New Testament challenge. Today, we're in Genesis chapter 13. And if you read this chapter, which I hope you always read the chapter first, you see that Abraham and Lot come to a pivotal point in their relationship. Remember, Abram has taken Lot with him when he left, and he's been on this travel with him, and they both have prospered. They have herds that have grown, and they have servants who are taking care of their herds. And you read about Abram having all these other possessions, but they camp at this one place, and all of a sudden there is a conflict. There's a fight between the herdsmen of Lot and the herdsmen of Abram because there wasn't enough to support these great herds that were there. And so Abraham sees this problem, and he sees the solution is they've grown to a point when it would be better if they separated from one another. They didn't try to combine their sources. It was so large, any land they would come to, they would almost overwhelm. They had great possessions. And then what's amazing is what he does. He was the patriarch. Lot was his nephew. He could have just said, Lot, you go there. And Lot would have obeyed him. He would have went. But instead, he goes to Lot. And he says, Lot, you need to choose. I'm going to let you choose. If you go left, I'll go right. If you go right, I'll go left. And that way, our flocks can continue to grow, and there's no conflict or strife between us, between our herdsmen. And so Lot kind of gives us a comparison here. Because what Lot does is he looks for what seems in his eyes to be the most advantageous place to go. He looks out and he sees this fertile valley near Sodom and Gomorrah where it's watered and it's green and it looks awesome. And he doesn't take into account the atmosphere he's about to take his family to. Instead, he looks at what he could do in that kind of situation, how much more his possessions, his flocks could flourish. So he takes that and he leaves Abram. And then Abram turns and goes in the other direction. He goes to Canaan. And he goes to this area. And when he does this, there's a break in the narrative when God comes to Abram and basically assures him to say, Abram, I want you to look around. I want you to look north and south and east and west. And just as I've told you that your family will be as many as the stars in the sky, you know what? Now I want you to look, because as far as your eye can see every horizon, that will one day be the possession of your people. And then he camps. Interesting, where he camped historically was 22 miles from what would be the one day Jerusalem. In other words, the land he has chose is now what we know as the promised land. I think the comparison between these two really is striking, because we have Lot who went purely off what he could see, and we have Abram who went off faith. Knowing that God was with him, knowing he had God's promises, he wasn't worried. He knew wherever he went, he would have the blessing of God upon him. So he had the confidence not to strive and not to fight on his own, but let Lot choose, because he knew no matter what Lot chose, God's blessing would still be with him. And amazing, because guess what? He ended up right in that place where God wanted him to be, right in what we now know as the promised land, just camping just short of Jerusalem. I think the challenge is for us, so many times we have conflict, so many times we have to be careful that we just don't make our decisions on human logic. We just don't make our decisions on what is most advantageous to us. We have to times be willing to serve others. Christ did this. Christ said, though he should be served by all, he made himself a servant of all. He didn't come to be served, but to serve. Abraham had that kind of faith. And I think in this world, sometimes we fight so much for our own, we forget that God is in this battle with us, that God is with us, that God is greater than us, that God can direct us. And sometimes we need to have faith that God is there and he cares, that he can direct us, that he can protect us. And sometimes, rather than fighting for our rights, we have to lay our rights down, that God can lift them up. Challenge you guys. Don't know what you're facing today, but you're in a pivotal decision. If so, seek God. Don't just go off what you see, but in faith, what does God want you to do? Thank you so much for continuing our New Testament challenge. Don't miss tomorrow, the last day of the week, Friday, as we'll continue our New Testament challenge.